Hello and welcome to Nintendo Nightly. My name is Michael Cottrell, and today we're joined on the show by my twin brother, player 2 since the womb, Matthew Cottrell. Say hi to him.
What up, boys and girls?
So Matthew hasn't been on the show in about 30 episodes. We talked for the 4XM
30 years.
Melee mod episode, and he hasn't been on since. But we have played through Kirby, and we want to talk about that. This is a new series I want to start on this channel called The Final Word. Don't call it a review. It's not a review. It's the beginning of a discussion. And I want to talk about just some written points that I have here on my phone. Not necessarily a scripted thing. We're not going to give a score at the end. We just want to talk about our experience of the game, give sort of an overview, and, you know, it's fun to discuss and debate these things, and if this helps in your purchasing decision or lack thereof, then awesome. Glad we could help you out with that. If you want to purchase the game, there's an Amazon link in the description, and that gives us a kickback for the show. That's awesome. But if you don't buy it, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
this
is all you, baby.
And this is really more of just an open discussion, you know, sharing our thoughts about the game, what we think, not meant to be a verdict on, you know, it being a decisive factor whether or not you choose to purchase this game or not. You know.
Yeah, so take our experience for what it is, and just to add a little context, we played the game entirely through with a single-player playthrough, a two-player playthrough, and we had a little bit of three-player. Didn't ever get a chance to get 4 people in a room to play this. But with that being said, let's jump into it. And if you want to keep up with this sort of Nintendo news, impressions, reviews, yada, 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 be sure to subscribe to Nintendo Nightly on whatever platform you're listening on. Any review or comment or feedback is really appreciated. Like, what do you think about the setup? What do you think about this format? Love to know what you think. So let's talk about Kirby Star Allies. And I want to just set a little bit of a table here that Kirby has become like an interesting... It's gone through this sort of transformation as the series has gone on. It started out as a... easygoing 2D platformer with this interesting mechanic where you would inhale enemies and spit them back out. Then they introduced copy abilities, and when it got to Superstar, it really became more of a beat-em-up game than a platformer. I mean, you could probably count on 2 hands the amount of gaps that you have to jump over in Star Allies, where if you didn't make that jump, you would die, and you'd never fall down there anyway because you can use the inhale mechanic.
I mean, honestly speaking, I can't remember the last time a Kirby game has put an emphasis on platforming when it comes to precision, timing, anything that you would think of when you're looking at Donkey Kong Country or Super Mario Brothers or any of the more well-known, you know, platforming franchises.
Yeah, and that's what I'd want to, like, the little asterisk I'd want to put on this discussion is that, like, if you're looking for some game to kind of compare to Super Mario Brothers or Donkey Kong Country Returns, like, you kind of find that, but not really. Like, it's a totally different shell. Now, in terms of like, you know, is it easy? Yes, it's incredibly easy. This is one of the easiest Kirby games that I've played in a long time, and that's always been, you know, at the heart of Kirby. It's sort of the beginner platformer, just like even like just the beginner side scroller game to kind of teach you video game controls, whereas like Paper Mario is like your first RPG.
Right, and I'll say too, and really the nice thing about that is it makes Kirby more distinguishable, where you don't feel like you're just playing another 2D Nintendo platformer.
Right.
Because even playing this game through with you, I mean, it does not feel like any normal platformer experience that I've had before, other than maybe previous Kirby titles.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been also like just been this trend toward easiness in games in general. Like, I mean, New Super Mario Brothers U, I was playing that recently, and I could just destroy that game. Like, I typically don't lose lives until like the 6th world, and so yeah, I mean there's I don't know, we're kind of muddying the discussion. Let me organize this a little bit. So what is the game? Kirby is as you can imagine from the title, a game where you recruit allies. A lot of these mechanics actually came from the GameCube game that was canceled, and you can look up old E3 footage and find similar things of Kirby riding on these friends, and the piggybacking mechanic is there. You can see him teaming up with friends like Bonkers and other enemies throughout the Kirby series, and that's it's interesting. I really like that they finally got around to doing this, because the last game, Return to Dreamland, would lock you into Meta Knight, Dedede, and Bandana D. In this game, you can play those characters or just a ton of other ones. And so the whole game hinges on this ally experience. You will combine power-ups to solve puzzles. You will combine power-ups to do bonus damage in boss fights. Like water and lightning works incredibly well. I just demolished the boss rush mode with that combination, and it's fun to kind of like compile a team of like different characters who excel at different things. And this is like the overarching system that makes this Kirby game different from your other core Kirby games, like say Kirby Superstar, the Return to Dreamland, those sort of newer side-scrolling, like, you know, very much in the core of Kirby games. So what do you think about the ally system in your experience?
Oh, I think it works great. I think, so it's one of those things, it leaves a little bit to be desired, because I think there's so many more possibilities that they could have gone for in terms of different combinations. And, you know, like, for example, Kirby and the Crystal Shards on Nintendo 64 had a lot more possibilities in terms of combining abilities and what possibilities that created. Whereas this is more of a shallower, like, you know, you've got your basic elements like fire, electric, water, winds, and, you know, there's a few possibilities between those, but it doesn't go much more in depth beyond what you would expect, so to speak. Like, you can kind of guess what combinations are going to work beforehand, and what you'll need them for. But I think it's an interesting concept, because no game's really gone for the type of puzzle solving where you need other people that bring other, you know, abilities to the table in order to progress through the game. But at the same time, in terms of leaving more to be desired, I think that they also didn't capitalize enough off of that too.
Right. It always seemed like this sort of side thing, which I appreciate and I also lament. You know, you would run through the level, and usually these were in their own separate bonus rooms, and they would provide all the abilities in there. And so, yeah, they always seem like they put these abilities in like their own separate room. They provide everything you need to solve the puzzle right there, which, like, I appreciate that they don't like police you too hard and you don't have to do too much guesswork on like what abilities to get and where. But at the same time, the puzzles sort of just solve themselves. So they're a nice like diversion from the main portion of the game, which is run into a group of enemies, destroy them, run into a group of enemies, destroy them, so on and so forth. Having these puzzles, it's kind of fun to cooperate with your friends and do it. Where I find most of my frustration was in single player mode, because the cool part about the puzzles is that there is a pre-designed way that you should solve them, but you can do other things to solve them. Like if there is a wooden peg sticking out from the side, what you're supposed to do is combine the rock ability and the water ability. But if you have a hammer character like Bonkers or Dedede, you can just go up and smack that thing in the wall. But if you have an ally that does that, they're not going to be smart enough to realize that, so you have to jump on their back and then hit it. And then at the same time, like sometimes they'll be way too smart and they'll solve the puzzle before you've even figured it out. Basically, the way that it works in single player is when you walk in these rooms, and if your allies have the required abilities, they will notice what they're supposed to do and just go and do it. And so that's where like the game really falls apart. It's not like unplayable, but I didn't find the game to be as compelling in single player as in multiplayer. And let me just make that case real quick. So it doesn't suck. That's like the overarching thing that I want to say. It's totally playable, but the computer allies are like 100% sure to bug you 5 times or more during your playthrough. They're either way too smart or they are way too dumb. They'll do the puzzles only the way that they're supposed to be solved, and you can't like say like command your fire guy to give fire to your sword guy without also giving fire to yourself. And then there's some characters that have like multiple abilities that they could either share or take in, and you just like hold up and hope that they start to realize what they're supposed to do and do it. So that's like guaranteed to frustrate you. The AI will follow you straight into obstacles, and often like in boss battles they won't do anything at like really crucial times where you could build up damage or you could have a chance to create some healing items, and they don't really add much to the game other than holding on to abilities that you might need to solve puzzles. I will say it's cool to build a little Kirby entourage of like, oh, I got Dedede, I got Chef Kawasaki in the back, you feel me? And you got like some other muscle from the series, and like that part is really cool. And I appreciate that like they gave so much love to these characters that are, not super significant in the series, but at the same time, I feel like they should have like kind of rebalanced single player to kind of go around that. And if you want to play single player with just Kirby, well, I mean, you need to kind of scale up to 4 allies and then scale down and like kind of play that game if you want to do that. But I will say, like, I did a playthrough of the game with because I got a hankering for the classic Kirby days where I didn't take any abilities and I played alone, and I think it's kind of a different game that you're playing there, so it's nice to have that versatility too. But single player isn't super great, but that's more of like a note to inform you on than a real point of criticism. I realize that like this game was designed to be played with 4 people, so I just want to form that separation. If there's a very unlikely chance that you're going to be playing this with friends, then like that's something that you definitely want to take into consideration, but at the same time it doesn't make it like a terrible game.
Well, and I'll say it and that's why I said before, there's a lot in single player in Kirby that it's good, but it leaves a lot to be desired because you appreciate the fact that it's there, but then at the same time, you're almost upset because it's something that should be better that isn't.
Right.
For example, the Dream Rod, being able to switch between the Dream characters, the fact that it's a random. Now, don't get me wrong. It's very easy to end up getting the character that you want, but just the sheer notion that it's this random thing is just, it's frustrating, honestly. It just leaves a little bit to be desired because you're like, I'm glad and thankful that these characters are here, but you're making it difficult for me to potentially get the one that I want to play with. And I think that's honestly a microcosm of the entire game, is that it's a fun game and you'll really enjoy it, but it leaves you with an appetite in your mouth that you can't sustain or fulfill because it hasn't completely delivered on something it easily could have.
Yeah, let's talk about some nitpicks. My favorite thing. So yeah, like to switch characters there, it's obnoxious. In certain modes, you're where the Dream Rod will spawn within a level, your AI controlled teammates might jump into the rod, transform into the character, and then like there's only one Dream Rod that spawns per Guest Star Allies run, which we'll get to more of that. But yeah, the astounding lack of options is something that really just miffed me. Like it's 2018. It shouldn't be that hard to like remap your controls. And Kirby lets you do that, but they only give you 2 choices, and whatever choice you make, it commits every player to that same choice. And it's just, why? And like, if you want to switch characters, like, to like, if you're playing Dedede and I wanted to play Dedede now, well, like, too bad. Like, finish the level or finish the guest star run, and then like try and get him again. And like, there should just be like a start screen where I can like, switch which player is where. I remember at one point we were trying to like take control of certain characters, and we had like switched which controllers were in which order on our Switch just to like switch to
almost
a different character.
The game
like,
into...
it's ridiculous. And all the while, at the same time, we were I just lost that point.
Switching. Well, you were just talking about switching between different controllers and how we're almost having to trick the game into doing what we want it to do when it should just be a simple option of, hey, like this player wants to switch to Dedede, because they make it very easy to get rid of abilities and to get rid of characters.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that's the thing. There's 2 or 3 different options as far as getting rid of allies, but it's like, if it's that easy to get rid of, why wouldn't it just be that simple to reassign them?
So whenever you beat mini bosses, they spawn these little hats, and your dumb AI partners will jump in and like leave their really good ability for like the ice guy. I remember playing the boss rush mode, and I have the chef, so because the chef can heal you, and then he jumped in, just became a snowman, and like, why?
And
Why?
I'll preface everything we're saying by like Michael said before, and I'm just going to reiterate. We both really enjoyed the game. It's just one of those. The way I look at it is the same way I would look at a game like Super Mario 3D World, even though I feel like that's a superior game. But that game, it was never really designed to be a single player experience. And so if you play it by yourself, I still think that's a fantastic game in its own right, but it definitely feels a little bit, or leaves a little bit to be desired, in my opinion. Whereas Kirby's the same thing. I think when you're playing it by yourself, there's some things that become frustrating that otherwise shouldn't be. Whereas if you're playing with multiple players, all that stuff kind of works itself out.
Yeah, it's definitely better. So let's talk about the multiplayer. The multiplayer is much cooler, as you can imagine. You can strategize what abilities you're going to roll with. You have the opportunity to solve puzzles yourself and actually make decisions that are meaningful to get through them. And even with just one extra person, the AI is a little more manageable because instead of 3 of those idiots, there's just 2, and you can manage that a little bit better.
Less idiots.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed our co-op playthrough. We played most of the game in 2-player, some of the game in 3-player. Also, with how easy and approachable Kirby is, it's easier for someone to jump in and play with you. And I appreciate that in the sense of just getting Trevor up to speed on how to play the game, and he just jumped right in. Whereas I had you jump into the later portion of New Super Mario Bros. U, and when you jump into the late portion of those games, it's just kind of hard to gather your bearings. And also multiplayer actually works better with Kirby. In New Super Mario Bros. U, they had this fantastic idea where they're what if 4-player was obnoxiously difficult because everyone on the screen is an obstacle? It was the dumbest idea ever, and I could write an encyclopedia on why that's dumb. I remember just wheezing, dying, laughing at the dumb shenanigans that would happen to us at New Super Mario Bros. And maybe that's the point, but it makes the game really frustrating to play. Kirby works much better. You can combine your abilities. You can, if you're using water and I have electric, you can create a pillar of water. I shoot electric through it, and that does bonus damage. And so there's lots of cool, nifty little things that you can do.
Collaborative thinking. There's collaborative thinking that goes into your playthrough with your teammates and what abilities you have to work with and whatnot. But that's why I'll say you can tell that Kirby is a game that's single player but was designed to be 4-player, whereas New Super Mario Bros. U is a single player. It's a game that's designed to be single player with the option to play with 4 people, because you can tell there's just things that are not well thought out in that game, like how if I jump on a Koopa, he immediately falls, and if I'm playing with 3 other people, they might need to traverse the same gap. But it wasn't designed with the thought in mind that oh crap, other people are going to need to get across this gap too. Whereas a game like Donkey Kong Country, for instance, they designed it where you jump on an enemy and it gives you about a second or 2 window to also hit that enemy, because it's thought out in the sense that this is a single player game, but we're not making it not work with multiple people, so to speak.
Right. They actually put some thought into that.
Right.
Where, it's. Mario was sort of the same design as Four Swords, where you spent more time arguing over who had the most rupees instead of the point of the game, which was cooperating, and it sort of ate at the whole point of the game. Nintendo does these weird cooperative competition things, but this game gets it much better. Healing items, even if you accidentally get them, you can share them with your other friends that need them. So it's cool in that sense. And I really enjoyed the part of multiplayer where I would often play Chef Kawasaki. And this is another one of those portions of just the missed opportunity. Kirby isn't the biggest crime Kirby commits is not being a bad game, but it's just
not being as good as it could be.
A fantastic game.
Right.
One of the best abilities that they had designed is Chef Kawasaki. He's got 2 very basic attacks. He's got this little frying pan that he hits with people, and then he throws china at people, teacups and stuff. And so he's not a great offensive threat, but he has the ability to have everybody jump in his pot, cook a bunch of enemies, and create food for the team. So, when you're building a team of 4 people to play through the game, he's a valuable asset in that case, where, you look at someone like King Dedede and the damage output that he has is just absolutely ridiculous. And so he's a valuable asset to the team. So I really like to sort of building those sort of team relationships, but too many of the abilities kind of mixed and mingled, and you wouldn't really notice the difference playing through as, one of them or the other, which again, it's like, on one hand, I appreciate that because it's not pressuring me to play a certain way, but at the same time, I would have enjoyed a little more pressure to just think a little more about who I was bringing with me.
Honestly, you make an interesting point, because you can tell there's a shallow version of that, where something you just described, if it was, I think, thought out a little better, you would design design your team more strategically around, like, okay, this character is not much of an offensive threat, but then I've got an offensive threat right here. So it's almost like you've got one character making up for the deficiency of another, but then you've also got another character who's in more of a support role. In that game, or Kirby Star Allies can certainly do much more with that. It just doesn't do a whole lot with that, because the game's so darn easy to begin with that there's not really much thought that needs to go into it.
And that's my biggest nitpick with the game, is that there's no real hard mode. And I guess this will sort of open up the discussion into like beating. So you beat the main game. It'll probably take you like 4 to 8 hours, depending on like your familiarity with Kirby and whether you want to collect all the stuff or not. But after you beat that, it opens up a new couple of modes. You can do a boss rush, and you can do Guest Star Allies. Guest Star Allies is a really cool mode where it takes the full game, condenses it into what would you say, like an hour and a half playthrough, and adds a new boss at the end. There's an emphasis on doing it fast. You get power-ups along the way to make you move faster, and you also start with like half the HP, and that's where it's like sort of billed as like a hard mode. But the thing is, as you collect these power-ups, you get more powerful, you get faster, and you get the same amount of health eventually as you did in the original playthrough. And so it actually ends up being easier. And by the end of at the end of each stage, when you're going up against the boss, who's supposed to be like sort of a challenge to cap off your experience, you just steamroll him in 13 seconds. And like, man, even so I played the game one player, and I played the game with two players. When I played the game like a third time, just playing around on some of the boss stages with using just Kirby, I realized that there are so many attacks that are designed for the bosses that I never saw, because we would always just cream them so fast. And I feel like, especially with Return to Dreamland having the nice little like addition of a hard mode that they had, where you beat the game and now there's like an extra, a new game plus sort of mode where it's a little harder this time. The enemies are a little more aggressive. They're a little larger, and, figure it out. I really appreciated that because it gave you, one, a reason to go back, and two, gave the challenge that some other players were looking for. And I feel like, this is HAL Laboratory. I feel like they are some of the best equipped people to create variable difficulty in games, because they do it so well in Super Smash Bros. You've got that scale from very easy to intense in games like Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and I had fun playing Subspace Emissary on normal, and like, okay, maybe I can take it up to hard, and then eventually doing intense, where it's just blazingly difficult, but I got through the whole thing and I enjoyed it. This doesn't offer any of that, and with how easy it would be to implement, to just like, give me a bar, like a fighting game, like let me decide how much health I can take into this playthrough. Let me decide, do the enemies do normal damage, 2 times or 3 times damage? All of these things are like sort of in place in like the boss rush mode and the early parts of Guest Star Allies, but like just give that to the player and give it to me from the start. If this is my 14th Kirby game and I want it to be a little more spicy, like, yes, that's not what Kirby is designed to do, but at the same time, like, give me that option.
Yeah, and
it's 2018, like, options.
Yeah, and
fun.
And to use your example of Brawl, because when it comes to Subspace Emissary, I don't think Brawl, it's difficulty scale was done very well, because I think that what would happen is when the game gets more difficult is it just takes longer to kill enemies, and they just do a ridiculous amount of damage or knockback.
But at least it's something.
That was going to be my point, is that it's just nice that it's even an option to begin with, though. And that's the whole thing with this game is that really what it suffers from is just not giving the player enough options to decide what they want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the essence of a game is not to be played exactly the way the developer has in mind, is to really see what possibilities you can create with what they've given you. And I think that always creates for a more interesting gameplay experience for any game. But I just think, like you said, Brawl's difficulty scale is not done very well, but it's nice that it's even an option.
Yeah.
If I want to choose to play that way.
You want to think, even with Smash 4, with Smash 4, it's kind of woof. But with Melee, I remember doing very hard on classic mode and just really enjoying that. Like, because I was a little kid when I played that game, and that scalable difficulty kept me playing so much longer than I would have otherwise if it just had that one easy mode. And then, like, ironically, the challenge mode in the game is easier. That's like the weird part, is that, like, Star Allies tries to do some things and then, like, ends up walking in the opposite direction accidentally. Another example of that is, so in most levels, there's going to be some portion where you do this friend formation. It was a big marketing part of the game where, like, oh, you turned into a train, you turned into a bridge, you turned into a wheel. And, like, it's cool the first time you do it, but you start to realize, like, oh, wow, like, this part's single player.
Yeah, it defeats the
Here I am with my
game.
4 friends, and only one of us can control things, which is usually just the press of a button or moving the control stick. So it's like a simplified thing. And then there's big portions of other levels, including a major portion of the finale of the game that's essentially one player. And so this game builds up this whole narrative that it is a game about teaming up and couch co-op and all of that stuff. And then you get into it, and it's like, well, this part's one player. And this part's one player too. Just like, what? Why? I don't understand that whole piece to it. I think co-op belongs in Kirby. I think it's just like, even if a Kirby game is designed to be one player, like say Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, it's just fun to have other players in the ring if the game can make it happen. I think, you know, most games should try and, like, figure out some sort of multiplayer, because games are just great like that. But yeah, they would do, like, these weird things in this game where I couldn't really figure out what it was trying to accomplish. But yeah, that's my frustration. Everything else, like, I might sound overly negative on this game, but it's because everything else is just, it's solid and it's what you would expect. You know, if you're into Kirby games, this isn't the best one. It's not the worst one, but it's not the best one, and it's just going to be that. It's a dandy little experience. While I'm saying all of this, I had a whole lot of fun playing it. I played it, you know, I had enough fun to play it once in single player, once in multiplayer, and to do the guest star allies. And I eventually want to go back and do every single run. But you know, until then, that's been my experience with the game. And, you know, it's interesting, they've been patching the game. Maybe they're going to make some, like, balance patches and do some interesting things to sort of streamline the experience. I hope they do. I hope they add a hard mode where I can play the game in just, like, a blistering difficulty, something like that, to just give me, like, a reason to go back. But who knows?
Well, and I think, honestly, frustratingly difficult is usually a lot more fun than blindfully easy. And I think even when I was younger, I agreed with that. Even when I wasn't the gamer that I am now, you know, I would rather it be more of a challenge than it just be like a cakewalk. Because, I mean, even me just finishing a single-player playthrough of Kirby, I probably have close to 200 lives. I can't think of maybe more than one occasion that I actually died and had to redo something. And it was really, honestly, mostly because of probably some silly mistake.
Yeah, there's one level in the game where my allies or I will die, and I know it because every playthrough, that's where it happens. There's these little, like, moving blocks, and they crush you. That's, like, literally the only place I've ever... Even when I was playing the game without any abilities and without any allies helping me, I still didn't die. And like, you know, again, the game is designed to be easy. At some point, we're not, like, faulting it for that, but again, it's just the missed opportunity of how much more engaging and how much of a wider audience could this reach if they had some sort of hard mode or something.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, honestly, like, that's what I really praise Tropical Freeze for adding funky mode. Because, like, honestly, you know, hard games are fun, and I like hard games, but you narrow your audience and you narrow your reach and you narrow the people that just get to enjoy your game, the game that you know, spent years making, by making it overly difficult or overly easy. So, like, figuring out creative ways to make that difficulty variable is the best thing to do. You know, funky mode, usually you used to have 2 hearts in Tropical Freeze. Here's 5. He walks on spikes. He breathes underwater. He has 2 jumps. He can hover. Like, those are the tools that empower you to get through the game. And then, you beat it with Monkey, try it with Donkey Kong, try it on hard mode. Like there's this like scalability to it. Celeste did a great job of this, where the game was typically, really hard, but you had the option to actually like move through the game with whether you wanted to have more jumps, whether you wanted to be invincible, and like that. For me, when I would like lose some save progress because I turned off my Switch at the wrong time, or when I got to the end of the game where I really just wanted to see what happened with the story, and I was kind of done playing the game, being able to like just choose, okay, I want to breeze through this part is such an amazing option, and honestly, like every game should strive to do that. So, I guess my final word on Kirby is that it's a cool Kirby game. It's a solid experience. There's some frustrations and some missed potential that you're going to see. But if you're looking for some more Kirby action, if you're looking for something on your Switch, I think it's a fun game. I've put
and something just
I've probably put like 16, 20 hours into it, and there's not too much more to do that isn't like kind of a rehash of where I've already been. So if you are looking for a game that's going to occupy a lot of your time, this is probably not the game for you. But I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and it's great too if you want a fun game to play with some friends. One thing I'll say I do really appreciate about the game, like you alluded to earlier, is that it's so easy to jump in and just understand what's going on and be able to enjoy yourself, because honestly that's what some of the more difficult platformers I think struggle with. Tropical Freeze, as much as you and I love that game, whenever I've tried to play it with anybody besides you, it's been difficult because it's a hard game, and if you don't normally play platformers, it's hard to just jump right in and play.
Yeah.
Unless you're starting at the very first level, and even then there's still a scalable learning difficulty. Same thing with Rayman Legends. I think that's a phenomenal game, and I love it, but anybody I've played with besides you, there's just there's a lot to grasp, if you don't normally play that. And so Kirby, I mean, when we played with our friend Trevor, he's able to just jump right in, have a good time, because there's not a whole lot to the game, but there's enough to it still for it to be fun to play.
Yeah,
and I really respect
fun.
it for that.
And one other thing I want to throw in with the game is that was really positive is the way they handle fan service and like taking care of the Kirby fan base is just wow. All right, so that is our discussion, the final word on Kirby Star Allies. I'd love to know what you think of this format and what you think of the game. Did you play it? Did you enjoy it? Are you going to buy it? Are you going to skip it? Let me know what you think in the comments, or if you want to write into us, you want to be a little more personable,
Let us know
what the bentoblock.com/Nintendo Nightly, and you can write into me there.
I was going to say too, if any of you have played Kirby, please mention like in what format and way you played it, because I think that's more interesting as far as perspective is concerned. Like, did you enjoy playing it single player, whereas Michael and I did not, or did you enjoy it playing multiplayer and didn't enjoy it, whereas we did?
I'm curious out there if anybody got the chance to play it with 4 people, because I never did. We should do that with some of the other guys from the office, but that's. That is it. So thank you so much for tuning in to Nintendo Nightly. Remember to hit the subscribe button and the like button and blah, blah, blah. It helps the show grow. I am sorry for the unannounced sabbatical. I took a couple weeks off for vacation, and now I'm going to try and get back. I don't know if I could do the whole like daily thing. That might have been a little biting off a little more than I could chew. I'm going to do my best to fill your feed with Nintendo goodness. So
bring you that Nintendo magic.
That Nintendo magic, boy. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all the encouraging comments you guys have given me. Seriously, I read those. I really appreciate them, and I will see you in the next video.